we could pick anybody to follow Dan, it would be Martin. So Martin's got an amazing background in coaching. I had a friend of mine who was a really, really good coach. The first time Martin came to this event, he sat back and goes, man, Martin's a good coach. I mean, it was just, so he knows the game inside and out, articulates it incredibly well, and one of the reasons he's been able to hit the heights and have the positions he's had, which I won't tell you those because we're trying to be our identities, not what we've done, but Martin's kind of done it. If you're going to list off anything you think you could achieve, Martin's probably done that and been there. But he's going to talk today about competition, and he does that really well. But number one thing, he's a great husband, he's a great father, and he's a great man of Christ. So welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to see so many familiar faces, and nice to meet some people for the first time. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is Joseph. Don't know, does any of you like the story of Joseph? How things are going well for him, and then things are going bad sometimes, but God was always with him. And that's a little bit like for me, things were going well today, then I heard Dan speak, now I've got to go next. It's like I'm the next guy up. But God was with Joseph, and God has been with me, and I'm sure God has been with you. And if we were to share time, talking about that, we could tell many stories. One of the things I like about the story of Joseph is you don't really know how well it's going to go till you look back, right? And I think that's the case a lot of times when I look at things in my own life. And one of the things that's been nice being here yesterday and today is hearing people speak who I know. One of the people being John Vermillion, who was talking a little bit yesterday and is going to talk again more tomorrow. And one of the parts of my life which taught me a lot about competition was I'd been coaching in the K-League in South Korea, coaching in Seoul, and I'd been there for a number of years. And it was time to come back to the US, and we came back to my wife's hometown, which happens to be a very small town in northern Michigan called Buckley, which is where John's wife is from. It's obviously a happy hunting ground for both of us. And I got to go back there and spend time there and not really be coaching. And one of the first things that I did, I was over at John's house in his kitchen, and he said, hey, would you like to help me coach the high school team? There's me and another guy, he's here as well, Ryan Jones. Would you like to help us coach the high school team? So I'd come from coaching Major League Soccer, then the K-League, and now I'm helping to coach this little school in Buckley, which I think only has about 100 or maybe 100 kids in the whole school. So anyway, we were in the kitchen talking about strategy, talking about ideas on how we wanted to play and what we wanted to do. We talk about maybe inverting the fullbacks and all this kind of stuff, playing like Ajax or whoever it might have been in their heyday. And we went out to practice, and after a few minutes, I realized none of these kids have ever even really played soccer before. So we got back to the kitchen, and I remember saying, none of those things that we talked about are going to work, These kids can barely kick the ball. And I'd come again from coaching very high-level players to then really seeing low-level players. I said, what is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to teach these kids to be good at soccer, or are you trying to help them win? And he said, I just need to help them win, or that's what we do here. We're trying to teach them to win. So these kids that had never played soccer before, really, they were more basketball players and farmers. They ended up, over the course of the next season or so, winning the district title, winning the regional title, getting all the way to the state semi-final. And it was just this incredible story of how competing, teaching these kids to compete, building relationships with them, and then seeing the impact that had on many people. It was incredible to see. And it's part of what I want to talk about today when it comes to competition. When I say competition to you, just throw out a few ideas on what it means to you or what you think about. What comes to mind when we talk about competition? Anyone?
Strive together.
Strive together, yep. Good.
How good you can be.
How good you can be, yep. Anything else? Yep.
I think a lot of potential brings the worst out of some of us.
Yeah, brings out the worst in some of us. Yeah, I agree with all of those things. Here's a picture a couple pictures I found about competition. Before, this is coming out, waving at the crowd and shaking hands and smiling. Can any of you relate to that before the game? And then during the game, and I Googled that, and unfortunately there was a lot of pictures like this. And so, yeah, competition does sometimes bring out the worst in us, but at the end of the day, that's our environment for soccer, is competition. So we want to talk about that today, and we want to cover some key points. What I thought I wanted to start with is really the end point, right? We could go through this all the way through and talk about this and get to this point here, which is competition in itself isn't good or bad. But when we compete, these would be some of the world's priorities, like absolutely obsessed with winning at all costs. It's about my glory, it's about my gratification, it's about how well I do and how well my team plays. Obviously having a great performance, earning awards. Sometimes, unfortunately, hate towards opponents or officials. Maybe it's just me with the officials, but maybe some of you can relate to that. Taking advantage of others for personal gain. And just really being focused on that winning. Does anybody ever feel like that? Yeah? And sometimes it's like we can justify it in a way in our brain. It's like, we have to be like that, otherwise I'll lose my job. Right? If I lose my job, then my kids will have to leave school and I'll have to find another job. Maybe I won't even find another job. So competition at a certain level is a sense of like, if we lose, this is really, really bad. That doesn't necessarily take into account the depth of love that God has for us, though, and the ability He's got to take care of us no matter what happens in life. And I've been able to see that many times. This is ideally where we want to get to. Biblical priorities focused on worshiping God through the way that we coach, focused on using our gifts, stewarding what God has given us in order to do our best, playing to win but with integrity and humility, doing things competing for God's glory, using sports for God's kingdom's purposes, loving and serving others, focused on excellence. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Would everybody agree that's kind of where we're trying to get to? Yep. Could anybody say that they find it hard to get there? Yeah, it's hard to get there, right? It's hard to stay there. It's sometimes a little easier when you're winning, right? Would that be fair? Is it ever the case that you're going up against a coach or a team that somehow they just like, push your buttons a little bit? Right? And maybe some of you are pretty good at this and you're able to portray this. But if you're being honest, you portray this, but inside, is there ever a sense of like, this rage almost? Yeah? So what I wanted to talk about today wasn't so much about what should it look like, because I think honestly we kind of know that. I want to try and help you understand how to do it. Right? And this isn't theory, this is like tried and tested, really, really valuable information that has come over time that I've learned that I think could be useful to you. So this is what I want to try and cover a little bit today. Okay. Have any of you got any examples of times when you were actually out there coaching and it didn't go well and you regretted it? You got back in the car and you were like, Not a long story, but if anybody's got anything, I've got a lot I could share, but anyone got anything where, I think someone last night was talking about coaching with their pastor and then feeling like they had to repent on the way home. Anyone? Yep.
Because someone didn't take time to get back to the car, because in a moment, the player walked up, they were late. I thought I was teaching discipline and all that. So as soon as they walked up, I said, "Hey." And she immediately responded, "Hi, Coach, how are you?" There you go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then we're like, yeah, exactly. Anyone else? I can go on.
My wife,
Yep.
we used to stop talking on Saturdays. and the essence, my wife's not interested in football, anything. And I remember one Saturday I came home and we played a game and she said, "Oh, how did practice go?" And my response was, "Well, the two teams have different shirts and there are officials. And we usually call that game."
Oh, I'm sure that went well.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, I look back and just that first moment you said, you have to look back sometimes.
Yeah,
And
yep.
I don't think we play, I look back with sort of regret that.
Yeah.
Personal behaviour.
Yeah.
And then, surely going to help us. How do you reconcile with that?
Yeah.
Still move forward.
Yeah, especially as a Christian, there's sometimes that sense of shame of messing up. I don't know about you, but I often feel as a Christian that I'm not quite far along as I should be. You know, I'm a pastor's kid, grew up in the church, but often felt I wasn't quite far along as I should be. And the unfortunate thing about that was that's probably because of shame. And then it's hard to then open up and be honest and get help from other people, which is what you really need in order to grow and become who God created you to be. So we're going to talk more about that. One example I've got, and you know how it is when you do something and then it's almost like in slow motion and you just wish, oh no. And I was in a game and I remember like kicking a water bottle, and then once I kicked it, it was flying towards the fourth official and no way to stop it. And I got a red card. And it was a night game in Montreal. So like, it was after the game. I got a call from home in Scotland, actually from my mother. And I was thinking, oh, there must be something bad because it's about 4 a.m. there. But it was just her giving me a hard time for getting sent off. She was still up watching the game. So there's many times where I've reacted in a certain way and then I've just wished I hadn't, especially trying to be an example. We're talking about discipleship and encouraging our team and helping our team and so on. So I think we can all relate to most of those things. What I want to help you understand is awareness of your emotional state when you're actually coaching. Some of this information is from a book called Genesis Process, which has this thing called the Faster Scale in it. And basically it talks about our emotional state in life, and it talks about when things are going well and we're living in a place where we're accepting life on God's terms, we have grace, we have mercy, vulnerability. That's where we really want to be living our life as Christians. In terms of coaching, that can involve making sure that we're very focused, that we're solving the problems that are coming up, we're encouraging others, we're identifying how we're feeling ahead of time, and we're respectful of what's going on and making sure that we're not overstepping the mark. To do that, though, we want to be living in a place where we're accountable to others, where we're being open and honest, where we're connecting with others, where we're increasing in our relationship with God, we're increasing in relationship with other people, we're focused on His Word and so on. Now, obviously, that's where we want to be living as Christians. We want to be growing, we want to be open, we want to be honest. We don't want to have a secret life that people don't know about, that we're really ashamed of. We want to be in this place ideally. Now, on that scale, there's a whole bunch of other things, but often when I'm coaching, I'm actually in this place which is really ticked off. Okay, I'm getting adrenaline high on anger and aggression. Does that sound familiar to anyone when you're coaching? You may be able to keep it together on the outside, but inside there's just this pain and there's this turmoil. Okay? I'm sarcastic, black or white, all or nothing thinking, rage, mood swings, not wanting to listen to anybody, feeling alone, nobody understands, I'm overreacting, I've got resentment towards other people, I'm ending up withdrawing, I'm blaming people, blaming players, blaming officials, blaming others. Again, is it just me? So that's what's often going on while we're doing the thing that we love, that we're called to do, that we're excited to do, that we want to do, and yet it drives us into this place that we're often ashamed of. Some of the worst interactions I've seen on the soccer field haven't been at the high professional level, they've been in the church league. They have. They've been in the church league, and I've been involved in some of them. But we want to try and figure out, so why is it we get there? And by the way, on this faster scale, this is a scale that helps people understand their emotional and even their spiritual state, where they are. And basically it's a scale that goes from that restoration place that I talked about, where we want to live, down through a few different factors like this, like ticked off. And ticked off is like a couple of items away from basically acting out and finding ways to numb out your pain. So every time I was coaching a game before, I was getting to this place. There's only one step, which was exhausted, before I was in a place where I didn't want to be, and I was acting out and finding ways to not feel so bad about myself. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. It's very much unspoken, but people find coping behaviors to really settle their nerves and settle the way they feel and to feel okay about life. And that's where a lot of coaches unfortunately live, where there's addictions and where there's these behaviors that they're ashamed of that cause a lot of problems. And that includes Christian coaches as well. So what I want us to help you understand is, how do we live more so in the place before, in the restoration, rather than the ticked off, okay? So this here is pretty cool, I always think, when science catches up with what God's told us in his word, right? It happens a lot. And I want to help you understand this diagram here. Has anyone ever heard of this? There's lots of parts to your brain, but I want to focus on two parts. One, the prefrontal cortex. Anyone ever heard of that? Anyone know anything about it? What it does?
Helps you make decisions.
Yep.
If your blood is flowing there,
Yep.
high oxygen flows and helps you make better decisions.
Helps you make good decisions. Yep. Anything else that people know about it? You obviously could read here too. But basically, this part of our brain, see, when we're here at this conference, we're all in this part here. Yep. I want my identity to be right with God. I want to be motivated by the right things. I want to compete in the right way. And yeah, I'm going to be able to do that. This is prefrontal cortex, when everything's kind of calm and okay and normal. And this goes for every part of life, not just coaching, but coaching's a really good example of when we don't live there, we live in this limbic part of our brain. The limbic system stores all the things that happen in our life, and it tries to protect us from getting hurt again in the future. The limbic system is far more powerful than this part. So this is why, for example, if people have addictions, they might say, I'm never doing that again, I'm never going there again, but this limbic system goes, yep, this is what we're going to do. So in order to transform the way we think, which is what Romans 12 verse 2 talks about, we have to understand how to reprogram this part of our brain, which we're not even really thinking about. So that's why when you go out to coach and you have the best intentions of being a good witness and being a good example, and then you're driving home in the car going, I can't believe I did that again. That's because this part of your brain is in control. And so what I want to talk about for the next few minutes that we have is, how do we get to a place where we transform the way that the thinking happens, so that we're making good decisions, so that we are able to process effectively, so that we can then coach the way we want to coach, so we can compete the way we want to compete, and we can still be the absolute best that we can be. So we're not passive, we're not giving up, but we're also not out of control and in a rage. Sound good? So to give you a little bit more context to this here, Romans 12:2, right? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The way that we think impacts us a lot. It impacts our actions. It makes us go in directions that we maybe sometimes would rather we didn't go in. If you want to change your thinking, you have to first of all be aware of what you are thinking. Is that fair? If you don't know what you're thinking, it's hard to change it. Okay? Also, this applies to your players. If you want your players to play more effectively, you don't want them living in their limbic system. Because when they're in their limbic system, they don't make good decisions, they make mistakes, they can't stay calm, and so on. Coaching actually, where I've seen this work the most, is coaching at University of Notre Dame with the women's soccer team. The first year I got there, they had, I think, only won 5 games the previous season. They hadn't qualified for the ACC tournament. They hadn't qualified for the NCAA tournament. They weren't doing well, and we were coming into the next season with the same players. The next season, we got to the semi-final of the ACC tournament. We were in the top 2 or 3 teams in the ACC. We went far in the NCAA tournament. We had multiple players that went professional, and literally it was the same team with maybe 1 or 2 players. What we helped them understand was that they were all good players, but when they stepped on the field, they were operating out of fear. They were making bad mistakes. They weren't really focused on the task. They were focused on the outcome and the worries of what might happen. Have any of you ever coached your team and seen how talented they are, and then seen them in a game and thought, what is this? Well, often what's happening is they're not living in the right part of their brain. So we had to teach them, okay, yeah, now this is a big game. If we win, we go on. We lose, we go out. What we have to focus on is the task. We will actually analyze this afterwards, but right now we must be in this part of our brain. So every time you start going, what if I mess up? What if my teammates don't like me? What happens if it's my fault? What happens if we lose? You have to constantly bring your brain back to, right now I'm just playing. I'm going to analyze this later. And then they can stay in a more calm state and focus on actually controlling the ball, passing the ball, being accurate. And their performance, that maybe wasn't just the only thing, but had a huge transformation. So this applies to your players as well as it does to you. So coming back to the point of let's focus on us as coaches. If you want to understand what's going on in your limbic system, here's 3 areas that you need to know about. So the first area is, what was it like growing up in your family of origin? And this applies to helping anybody else, but it applies to helping you. What was it like growing up? Okay, especially between the ages of 12 and 18, but in general. So if someone was asking me, I would say it was great. It was amazing. Great family, Christian family, great support, time together, and it really was. But I also grew up in an environment where I was the minister's son, and I always felt like people were looking to see, am I doing what I should be doing? So I had this incredible sense of trying to be perform well and be good enough and be perfect. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to be everything that everybody else thought I should be or wanted me to be. So that led to like a little bit of, I'm going to present myself this way, and anything that isn't right, I'm going to hide it over here. So even though I grew up in a great Christian family and a great Christian home, there was still things that impacted how I saw the world and how I lived. And that's the same for you. Many people who I've helped through this and worked through this with have come from things like maybe there was a divorce in their family. So they wondered, was it my fault that this happened? Or it might be that they were adopted, or it could be that someone died. And actually, when I look back on all these things, I realized that this impacts how I think, and this impacts how you think. So then let's just think about it. If I don't ever consider it, then every time I step out there to coach, my value is based on the performance. My value is based on the result. Not only is it good enough for our team to win, but I am a failure if we lose. So that's going on in my limbic brain. So I have to transform that. I have to change that. I have to take that into context based on what God says about me, and we're going to focus more on that in a minute. So the first thing is, what was it like in your family of origin? Second thing is, has there ever been anything happen to you that was traumatic? It could be a big thing, a whack. Could be a death in your family, could be something like that. Could be a lack, which is a smaller thing that happened over and over. Maybe people called you names. Again, I was the minister's son, so it was like people would enjoy making fun of that. It didn't really seem like a big deal, but again, it helped me realize that, hey, the thing that actually made me fit in was I was quite good at playing soccer. Right? And people liked me for that, it seemed like. And the better I did, the more popular I was, and so on and so forth. So that's going on in my brain. I have to perform or I'm a failure. Soccer's the thing that makes me cool or makes me okay or makes me respected or makes me valuable. Can any of you think, because of your background in soccer, that that may be going on for you potentially? That soccer has given you a lot, that's made you look a certain way, that people have looked upon you because they thought, wow, this guy knows his stuff, or this guy's good, or this girl's great at this. You're maybe the best player in your school, you maybe go and play in college, you maybe even play professionally. So this is the thing that makes you someone. Right? This is a lie, but this is what's going on, and this is why our limbic system's going, we have to win. That player messing up is killing me, it's making me look bad. That referee who's having that impact on this game is not only affecting this game, they're really attacking my entire worth. My entire worth. So when we go back to how we should coach and what it should be like when we compete, the reason it's nothing like that is because there's a lot going on that we're not even aware of. We talk about that iceberg, the things we see and the things we don't see. We're reacting out very heavily out of what we don't see. And the third thing, so the first thing is family of origin, second thing is trauma, and the third thing is our identity, how we actually see ourselves. So again, if from a young age growing up, let's say in Scotland, soccer was the sport that everybody talked about, that was the thing that people loved, that was a big deal, that's what made you popular, that's what made you important. The better that you were, the more respected you were, the more valued you were. Again, maybe you can relate to some of this. Then when I go out to coach, I have to win. Because otherwise there's this deep sense of not being good enough. There's this deep sense of failure. There's a deep sense of shame. There's a big sense of what do other people think. Probably our estimation is that they don't think we're very good. Is some of this making sense so far? So when you understand what's going on in your limbic system, it's quite easy to see why, man, I just lost it with that coach. Because what are they doing? They're saying something or doing something which effectively attacks me and all of my past. And if none of those things are processed, then that tiny little thing that happened is just one more thing on top of that pile of 100 other things that were just like it. And you know who uses that more than anyone else? The enemy. Right? The enemy is basically deals in lies. God teaches us to live in truth. The enemy wants us to live based on lies. Okay? So the truth is, my value isn't really found in me as a coach. Right? That's what God says. God says, before you were even born, I knew you. Think about that. The God who put the stars in the sky, makes day turn to night, makes the world turn, knew me before I was even born and thought it was a good idea. So I'm a big deal. But so are you. So are you. And so is the other coach you're coaching against. Not because of how good you are as a coach, not because of anything else that you do, but you're a big deal because the creator of the universe, boom, thought of you. Same with your players. Your players are a big deal. They're valuable. They're significant. And for so many years, I was trying to become significant through being a good coach. And it was a roller coaster ride of highs and lows, ups and downs, and that could all be in one game. Any of you kind of on a roller coaster still at the moment? I think most of us are, and I'm not saying I'm never on it, but I'm just saying I have a way better understanding of why and how to not be on it. Any questions on any of that so far? So how do we then get to a place of being able to live out what we know we should as a competitor, live out what we know we should as a Christian, be able to go after excellence, be able to strive for the qualities that we want to as a coach, be able to really build into our players, build into our other staff and so on. How could we do that? So one thing is, you can actually do this exercise, right? Break your life down into quarters. So if you're 40, you're going 0 to 10 and so on till you're 40, right? And think about the first quarter of your life. What happened in those first 10 years, and you can look at it for various things, but let's just talk soccer. What did you learn in those first 10 years about you based on your relationship with soccer? So for me, I had a lot of fun playing with my dad, playing with my friends, getting out there and enjoying it, being quite good at it, and so on. And so I learned soccer is like an amazing thing. Soccer makes me happy, soccer connects me with other people, and so on. Then it got to probably a phase where it's like, now, hey, winning is important, and achieving is important, and opportunities arise because of that, and so on. And eventually it becomes like, soccer makes me wealthy, soccer makes me important, soccer makes me respected, soccer makes me this, soccer makes me that. And what is that ultimately? It's an idol, right? I got to this place where the thing that God created as a game for us to enjoy and for me even to use it for His glory became a god. Because I thought, if we lose, again, I could lose my job, my family will have to move, think of the shame, think of the pain, think of this, think of that. And I've been in situations where we would win a game and there'd be people outside my house chanting my name. And we would lose a game and they wouldn't speak to me in the grocery store. I was the same person, but this lie that the enemy used was really heavily going on. I really was believing that my value comes from my performance. And so here's some things that we can think about in order to grow in this area. First of all, that exercise of the quarters of your life, and just see what are the lies that you believe about soccer and what's the truth that God says about it. And we want to base our life based on what does God say about me or you, what does God say about Him? Because ultimately God created us with the purpose of glorifying Him. Unfortunately for me, a lot of times soccer became about glorifying me. And again, not consciously, but subconsciously. So if I know I'm going into a game, I really need a lot of work to be done probably with other people to see blind spots and so on. There's some books that I can give you and material I can give you, and maybe even if there was people that really wanted to go through this exercise, it would take quite a long time, but I would be up for leading a group of people if you wanted to do that sometime online. I do that a lot at church, and I do that a lot in my life, and it's one of the main ministries that God's put in my life, and I love doing it, and I love just being part of seeing God transform people's lives, especially Christians who have behaviors in their life that they wish they didn't have, and I want to help them understand why they have them and how to be free, and that's something I love to do. So if that's something that people are interested in, I'll be around the next couple of days and maybe we can do that. But once you've done that and you have a better understanding of all these thoughts that are in your head and why they're messing you up, there's a few things you can do to help you prepare. So you want to do the best job you can in training, scouting the opposition, communicating to your team, and then you also want to be aware of these blind spots so that when you're going into the game, you can somewhat be prepared that these things are going to happen and I'm going to try and react in this way. And then you're in the competition, you've got the opposition there, you've got the officials, you've got your own players letting you down, everybody against you, everything going wrong, the weather, the wind, and everything else. You must understand what the trigger points are that are going to throw you in a different direction. You have to think ahead, and then we can slowly start to reprogram. So then when things go wrong, like so when the coach on the other team is saying something that's just really irritating you, now what I'm doing, instead of going, like, keep it together, don't do it, you're trying to be a good example, whatever, which I can't really think all of that when I'm trying to coach my team to win, I just remind myself I'm significant. God says I'm valuable. And that's sometimes enough to help me just refocus. I'm attacking the problem at the root issue. The root issue is what I had to figure out what my root issues were. You have to figure out what your root issues are. Knowing where they come from isn't enough because you then have to be transformed by what does God say. And if I can live my life based on His truth, I can then start to be able to manage these things so when they come up. And then afterwards I can reflect, can analyze the game, can present to the team about what we need to do better, can make corrections, and I can get help from other people. I've got a lot of people in my life who I can call, I can speak to, who will pray for me, who really know me. And I know the things that I struggle with and know how to help me. And we all need that. We're meant to grow as Christians in community, but unfortunately the enemy uses the shame that we have to keep us away from others, and he'll tell us this simple lie: you're the only one who struggles in that way. And if anybody else knew that, they would hate you. They wouldn't want to know you. Does anyone relate to what I'm saying? And it's a lie. It's a lie the enemy uses to really stop the church and stop Christians and stop coaches from becoming who they really should be. An environment like this, if this group of people were open and honest and worked through what those blind spots were and those things that are holding them back, it would transform literally thousands, maybe millions of lives. If we were living on mission in that way, not just knowing what we should do and trying to do it, but being transformed by the renewing of our mind. If we, just this group of people, did that and were not living in shame and didn't have these hidden secrets and these things that they're trying to hide from everyone else, they would be transformed, and so guess what, would the players that they work with. So would the people they interact with. So would the staff that they have on that they work with. And so it leads to, these key points here. Competition isn't the problem, right? Competition isn't good or bad in and of itself. Competition, if you're a coach, then competition is part of your reality. It's part of your context. It's something that you really should embrace, something that you should love. If you're on the other end of the spectrum where you don't even really care about the result and you don't really care about the performance and you don't really care, maybe at a certain level that works, but for the most part, that's because your brain has been hurt too many times and it's telling you, no. The only way you protect yourself is to not care. That isn't right either. As coaches, we are given talents and abilities that God calls us to steward for His purpose and for His glory. So when we're out there, we absolutely should be doing our best. When we're preparing, we should be doing our best. When we're reflecting afterwards, we should be on it. We should be doing everything we can to succeed, whatever the level might be. So the competition part isn't really the issue. I need to learn to passionately worship God in the best possible way to steward the gifts that He's given me. And I also need to accept this point here that I must seek to fully embrace the reality that the game that God created cannot give me what only God can give me. So like I say, I don't know about you, but for many years it was like soccer gives me this, soccer gives me that, soccer gives me the next thing. Ultimately, God may have used soccer to bless me in my life, but God was God. Like this point here, soccer is not a good God. It's not a good God, and it's unfortunately, many of us aren't even realizing it, but it is our God. And some of it is for all the reasons I've explained. You're not even aware of why you think what you think. And it's deep in your limbic system. The things especially that happen to you between the age of 12 and 18, that just builds a pathway in your brain that is so solid that unchecked, that's going to be your thought for the rest of your life. So think about that. Something like 90,000 thoughts a day, and 98% of them are the same as the day before. So if you want to think about this, you're pretty much the same as you were when you were 18, and you might be the same way when you're 60, unless you take time to actually transform the way that you think. But soccer isn't a good God. I used to think that soccer gives me money, control, power, security, popularity, significance, and value. So no wonder I was mad when we didn't win. And the thing is, honestly, my team's won a lot and I still felt like this. Lots of times we might win the game 3 or 4-0, but there's still times I was so ticked off that it wasn't done well enough. Could have been better. God may use soccer to bless me, but only God can give me, only God can give you what you may be thinking that soccer can give you. And the last point here, the depth of care and love that God has for us should give us freedom to coach with passion and joy, knowing that our value, significance, and well-being are already secure. So if you think about it on the coaching spectrum, probably the worst outcome would be that you get fired. Is that most likely that would be the worst outcome if you don't do a good job? Okay? So that would be a big justification to go crazy at the referee because the referee just cost you your job, let's say. Right? Or just lose it with your players because they made the same mistakes again. But if God, because of the depth of His care and the depth of His love for us, is going to take care of me regardless of the job, regardless of the outcome of the game, that gives me a freedom and an ability to coach wholeheartedly, with passion, with all of the talents God's given me, but in security that He's with me. That the outcome of my life ultimately is secure, and that He cares about my kids, He cares about me, He cares about my wife. And in life, when you look back, there's certain times where I feel like God has spoken to me in clear ways. And one of them was, I was on a missions trip to Mozambique, South Africa, and Sudan. And it was not long after 9/11. And so we went to the first part of that trip in Mozambique and South Africa. It was lots of fun. We had good players, good team, all that kind of stuff. But then it was coming to the point where we had to go to Sudan. Sudan was a closed country. It had 6 borders that were not well policed, and they reckoned that the majority of the most dangerous terrorists in the world were in Sudan. Some Christians in the past had gone to Sudan in the south. At that time, it wasn't northern and southern Sudan, 2 different countries, but it was one country. But nobody from the west would go to Khartoum, the capital city of Sudan, with a president, a tyrant called al-Bashir. I was not long after that, around that time, we'd had our first kid. And I was playing soccer, but I also had a lot of other interesting business things going on. And I remember thinking, I've already given up a couple of weeks of my own vacation time to come to Mozambique and South Africa. I could just go home now, because I basically was a bit scared to go to Sudan. Then, a couple of nights before we were due to go, we got sat down by the people leading the mission, and they said, everyone has to write a letter to your family just in case something goes wrong. Think about that. Right? And I wrestled with it, and I really had the sense of not going. And then just really clearly, God really, I feel, spoke to me, and He said, like, I can take care of you, and I can take care of your family better than you can. It was a really clear moment in my life that helped me actually move from the business things that I did to fully just coaching and ministry through coaching. But it's something I always try and remind myself, that God takes care of me just like He takes care of you. That's the truth. That's the truth. The lie is that we have to do it ourselves. The lie is no one else is coming to save you. The lie is you're on your own. The truth is, before you were even born, God knew you. He had a purpose for you. He still has that purpose. So, all being well, that can help us go out, coach the way we want to coach, the way we know we should coach. And hopefully today would give you reflection to think, right, I need to go and think about what I'm thinking about. And again, if people want to do that, I'd be up for helping a group of people do that. But you can also do that with other people if you're willing to be open, if you're willing to be honest. And God's power, God's Holy Spirit will bring transformation in your lives. And I truly believe the fruit of that will be seen on the soccer field, will be seen with your players. And honestly, like, you can thrive in coaching, you can love it, and not constantly feel like you're not good enough. So that's what I wanted to share today. Kelly, is that time pretty much?
Great.